instructional video, we are looking at narratology, the study of narrative. We'll be examining narrative structure and Vladimir Prop's work. One of the easiest ways to understand narrative structure is to compare it either to dominoes or to dynamite. I prefer dynamite for one simple reason. In order to get dynamite to work, you have to have a very long wick for that flame to come down to that first roll of dynamite. This way, the person can get out of the way before the explosion occurs. The reason why I like this idea of this long wick is because it reminds me that films begin before they begin. Meaning, there's something called an inciting incident. It's this moment from the past that impedes the life of the main character and pushes them into action. But this action is not full throttle yet. So you want to imagine at the beginning of the film, there's this inciting incident. A flame is burning. And what you see when the film opens is the stasis, or the balance of that world. And this inciting incident, this flame, is going underneath the balance. And it's about to hit that first piece of dynamite. Before we get further into the inciting incident and the new balance, let's talk about the balance itself. When you hear the word balance, you think that things are positive, that they're equal. But the balance, or the stasis, and I do prefer stasis, doesn't necessarily mean that the world is okay. I always go to The Dark Knight. Here we open in a bank robbery. So we know the world, the balance of this world, is filled with crime. And if we look at Kill Bill Volume 1, it's a little harder because there's lots of flashbacks and movements back and forth. But we know that the bride is in the hospital. And that's the balance of that film. Does that make sense? And also, that is not a stable world or a balanced world at all. A lot of rom-coms, on the other hand, let's go with The Bird, since that's what you'll be watching. The Birds opens up in what definitely looks like a balanced world where everything is okay and pleasant. We see Tippi Hedren's character going to a bird shop, and she meets Mitch Brenner, and they have some banter back and forth about birds. There's a little prank going on. That to us probably seems more balanced. But underneath all three of these things is an inciting incident. And so if we go to The Dark Knight, we know that Batman's inciting incident is the murder of his parents in front of him. That causes everything that he does in all the different movies and comic books. So when we, the viewer, sit down in the movie theater, just to make sure this is clear, the first thing we see when the film starts, besides the credits, is the stasis. And underneath that, the inciting incident is going. So it could be, the inciting incident could be some sort of psychological problem. It could be an addiction to alcohol or drugs. It could be the loss of a parent or a best friend. I mean, the inciting incident can be so many different things. So as we're moving through the stasis, something happens to the main character that really sets it moving into throttle. And this is where that first dynamite explodes, which I call the point of attack. And the point of attack in the movie you're going to be watching, The Birds, is when that first bird hits Tippi Hedren's forehead and makes her bleed. So there you go. I've just spoiled one moment from The Birds for you, so I will stop talking about The Birds. So once you get through that point of attack, which sets the hero on their journey, you have what is rising action. And the rising action is when the hero is trying to pursue his or her objective, and then an obstacle gets in the way of them achieving that objective. And they keep moving from objective to obstacle, objective to obstacle, objective to obstacle. And each of those to me is like a piece of dynamite explosion. There are big moments and losses and opportunities that happen to the main character as they move through the narrative. The next moment is called the recognition. It happens before the climax. And why I'm taking a pause here in narrative structure is because we have to understand an ancient work of dramatic literature, which is known as Aristotle's Poetics. So the Poetics was written about theater, and Aristotle wanted to understand how drama worked on the audience and how it achieved a catharsis. So I'm not going to go big into catharsis, but simply put, catharsis is a relief that happens inside the audience because they feel greatly for the character. They feel pity and or terror or both, and they're hoping that everything is set right. So Aristotle talks about plot a great deal, and he says that a good plot, a complicated plot, has the hero recognizing the problem so that they can hit the solution, which brings us to the climax. And so, there you have the beginnings of narrative structure. But in there, somewhere, the audience finds out what the inciting incident is. And there's no particular point in the movie where the inciting incident is laid down by the screenwriter, or let's say revealed by the character. So the inciting incident is one of these things that can be anywhere throughout the movie, and we usually figure out the inciting incident because of something called exposition. Exposition is backstory. It's not necessarily moving the story forward, but if we didn't have this backstory, we wouldn't understand where the characters are situated in time and place. So, if we look at the inciting incident, there's some similarities in the stasis as well. The stasis has a lot of exposition as well. We don't feel the plot moving forward. We learn about the characters, the world of the movie itself. So, exposition, like I love to bring up Anton Chekhov's play, Three Sisters. It literally opens up with, "Father died 3 years ago today." That is very sad, of course, but it doesn't move the story forward. It lets us, the audience, know what the mindset of the character is. Okay, so we've had the inciting incident we've realized. We know what the recognition has occurred, which allows the main character to go after and save the day, and the climax occurs, which generally tends to be big and explosive. And so after that, we get the falling action, where all the loose ends are tied together. And as those loose ends are tied together, we come to the final moment, which is the denouement. And the denouement, of course, French word, repeat after me. Denouement. 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 Which means, in French, the new balance. So, if you think about life itself, one door opens and another door closes. And it's the kind of same thing with movies. There's kind of a spiritual journey, in my opinion, attached to narrative structure, especially with this idea of the denouement. So the world is set right and we're in a new balance, which means, of course, we can begin another story. So when one story ends, another story can begin. Hence the sequels of many a horror film. You think in a horror film that everything is okay. And then we realize the monster really hasn't been killed. My favorite is in Carrie, where the hand reaches out of the ground Okay, so that is narrative structure. So I'm going to repeat it in its order. So we have the inciting incident, followed by the stasis, followed by the point of attack, followed by rising action, recognition, climax, falling action, and denouement. So there are 7 things all together. Hopefully that repetition helps you out. And the thing is, knowing narrative structure is going to help you understand the movie better and what the movie is doing better. But also narrative structure can help you understand a novel. It can help you understand a play. So it's not just about film itself. But with film in particular, it's formulaic because normally the point of attack happens right at the 20-minute mark or around the 20-minute mark. And some directors and screenwriters will push that a little further down the line and a little further up. But not a whole lot do you see that happening. And then I guess this last thing I should tell you is this. Every professor is different when it comes to narrative structure. So inciting incident and point of attack are often flipped, which annoys me to no end. I really feel inciting incident is the very first thing, because you hear the word inciting, it's the thing that begins. But other people feel like it's the point of attack begins the movie is how they put it. So you have to know the professor you're dealing with and find out if they believe the inciting incident is this flame burning underneath the beginning of the movie, causing that first dynamite to explode for the point of attack, or if your professor has flipped it. So I'm so sorry that none of us professors agree. That happens.